They called her Bookworm, until she broke every record, vanished into a war zone simulation, and left a colonel whispering about ghosts. They all saw her when she stepped off the bus, duffel bag slung low, boots worn in but clean, and that stone face like she'd seen everything twice and didn't care to explain it to anyone. Who's that? No idea. Doesn't talk much. Atlanta, maybe? She looks like she wandered in from the library. They thought she was lost, or soft, maybe both. Sergeant Eliza Monroe didn't say much that first morning. She lined up, nodded at the drill sergeant, and stared straight ahead as the sun baked the gravel beneath their feet. She was small, even by military standards, barely 5'5", maybe 130 pounds. Her uniform fit just right, but it was the scar peeking from her collar that caught eyes. Thin, pale, and angled like a claw mark, it looked old, but not forgotten. The whispering started that afternoon. She got that scar from a stapler in boot camp, I bet. Nah, looks like a tattoo removal gone wrong. Whatever. She'll wash out by week 2. Eliza didn't respond. Not once. Fort Darlington, in the middle of New Braunfels, Texas, didn't take kindly to quiet types. This was advanced tactical training, just shy of deployment readiness. No coddling, no second chances. Everyone there had done their time already. 2 years minimum in active duty, some in reserves, others with combat history. They all had something to prove. But Eliza, she seemed like she didn't care who believed in her. That unsettled people more than anything. The others came in loud. One guy, Staff Sergeant Devin Callier, walked around shirtless the first 2 days just to show off his sleeve tattoos. Marine Corps born and bred, he said to anyone breathing. His family tree had 3 generations in uniform. He talked like he was doing the Army a favor just by showing up. He noticed Eliza right away. "Hey, new girl," he shouted across the gravel lot during gear inspection. "You clean your mags with lotion or tears?" Some of the others laughed. Eliza didn't even look up. She continued scrubbing the carbon from her bolt carrier like she didn't hear a thing. That quiet made Callier mad. "Yo, I'm talking to you, girl." Still no response. Private Jonas Pirelli, fresh out of Phoenix and trying to ride Callier's coattails, added, "She don't hear you, man. Maybe someone should speak in audiobooks. She looks like she came out the back of a Barnes & Noble." That one got a few louder laughs. Eliza clicked her rifle back together with surgical precision and stood up. Inspection over. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just walked past them without a glance, heading back toward the barracks. Callier smirked. Whatever. Watch her fold during drills tomorrow. The next morning at 0500, they hit the range. Live fire, timed assembly, target accuracy, moving under pressure. That's where things started to go sideways. Eliza's rifle was in pieces in front of her. Timer started. 30 seconds later, it was clean, assembled, and chambered. No sweat, no error. The instructor walked by, raised an eyebrow, then marked her clipboard. Callier looked over, saw her grouping on the target, tighter than his, and muttered, "Lucky shot." Pirelli missed his last target altogether. As they moved to the combat simulation tower, a few of them looked her way differently. Still no words from Eliza. She just moved with sharp steps and eyes like a hawk. Calm, still, untouchable. They hated that. In the mess hall, she ate in silence, drank water, cleaned her tray, left. By the 3rd day, they gave her a name, Bookworm. But that didn't bother her, because Bookworm knew something they didn't. But when someone's too quiet for too long, people start looking for cracks. And when they couldn't find one in her, they started making their own. The name stuck. Bookworm. It spread like wildfire through the barracks. Even instructors started using it casually, thinking it was harmless. Eliza Monroe didn't seem to exist. She was just Bookworm now, an easy target, a running gag, a ghost nobody really knew but everyone joked about. They mimicked her walk. They exaggerated her silence. They talked about her like she wasn't standing 5 feet away, and through all of it, she said nothing. She woke up before reveille, ran 2 extra laps when no one was watching, cleaned her gear every night with the same precision she used on the range. It wasn't that she didn't hear them, she just didn't care. During a team relay, Callier made sure they were placed on the same squad. It was supposed to be a timed coordination exercise. Scale the wall, crawl under barbed wire, pull a 50-pound dummy to the finish line. Everyone had to rely on each other. Callier leaned in while tying his boots. "Let's see if the Bookworm can lift more than paperback weight." Pirelli snickered. "Hope she brought her library card." Eliza didn't even glance at them. The whistle blew. Chaos erupted. Shouting, grunts, dirt flying. Eliza hit the wall and was up and over in seconds. While Callier was still pulling himself up, she was already crawling under the barbed wire, low, flat, fast. Her elbows carved the ground like she was made of steel and memory. Pirelli lost a boot. Callier cursed. Eliza kept moving. When it came time to pull the dummy, she grabbed the harness, dug in her heels, and dragged it like it weighed nothing. When they crossed the finish line, the stopwatch read 4:43, second fastest team that day. But none of them high-fived her. Callier kicked dirt toward her boots. Should have been first. You jumped the gun on the wall. Eliza gave him a single look, not a glare, just a look, flat, cold, precise. You were still tying your boot when I hit the ground. It was the first full sentence anyone had heard from her since she arrived. Callier opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned away, jaw twitching. Later that night in the barracks, Private Keon Dudley, a former combat medic out of Shreveport, sat across from her. He was the only one who hadn't laughed, hadn't joined in. He watched her take apart her sidearm like she'd done it 1,000 times in the dark. You in intelligence before this? He asked. Eliza didn't look up. No. You shoot like you've been trained different. Silence. You're not green, I can tell. Still nothing. Then after a long pause, she said, I had a different unit. That was all. The next morning, the drills changed. Now it was room clearing, fast decisions, muscle memory, quick math. Every wrong move docked points. Callier missed a civilian target and got docked heavily. Pirelli tripped over his own rifle. Eliza went last. She entered the room smooth and quiet, head on a swivel, hands like clockwork. She didn't just clear the room. She predicted where the threats would be. 3 instructors stood watching. One of them, Master Sergeant Tino Alvarez, narrowed his eyes and said, She's done this before. They all knew the signs. Too sharp, too clean, too deliberate. Someone whispered, She's hiding something. But people don't like what they can't label, so they started rumors. She got special treatment. Maybe she's got a general for a dad. She's probably ex-CIA and got pulled for attitude problems. None of it stuck, because no one had the truth. And the truth was, Eliza Monroe had done things that the rest of them couldn't even picture on their worst night. But the more she proved herself, the louder they laughed, because nothing makes people more uncomfortable than a quiet woman who's better than them at everything they thought made them special. By the second week, nobody could ignore her skills anymore. Her name was still Bookworm to most of them, but now it carried an edge, less of a joke, more of a warning. A quiet one, a watch your back kind of name. The kind people said under their breath when she walked past. It all came to a head during the speed assembly and live fire test. Everyone knew this was one of the benchmarks. Fastest time plus cleanest shot grouping. You got bragging rights for a month. Callier had been the unofficial champion for 3 cycles straight. He trained like it mattered, practiced blindfolded, timed himself during meals. He was gunning for the record board, but when Eliza stepped up, everything shifted. She didn't stretch, didn't warm up, just sat at the table, gear in front of her, laid out like she could do it in her sleep. Let's see what story time's got today, Callier muttered to Pirelli, folding his arms. Timer beeped. Eliza moved. It wasn't fast. It was surgical. 3 pins inserted. Magazine loaded, round chambered, safety off. She took the shot. 3 shots, actually. Dead center, no spread. Timer stopped. 1 minute, 12 seconds. Silence. The instructor blinked at the screen. Callier took a step forward. No way. The instructor didn't look at him. That's a new facility record. Eliza stood, collected her gear, and walked off. No fist pump, no smirk, just silence, like always. The board was updated that afternoon. Monroe, E, 112. By the time dinner rolled around, the barracks were tense. Nobody laughed. Nobody clapped. Callier sat alone, fuming. Pirelli picked at his food. Dudley was the only one who dared sit near Eliza. You just broke a record that's been sitting there for 4 years, he said quietly. You know that? She nodded once. I saw the numbers. He leaned in. So what's the story? You with Force Recon? Some kind of ghost unit? Eliza looked up, just slightly. You ever seen a snake shed its skin, but keep the venom? Dudley blinked. What? She stood, dumped her tray, and left without explaining. The next morning, during inspection, it happened. Callier finally snapped. She was tightening her bootlaces like she did every morning. Calm, deliberate. Callier stepped right into her space. "You think you're special, huh?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She didn't look up. "You break a record and now what? You get a trophy? A sticker? You think this makes you better than the rest of us?" Still nothing. "Say something, damn it!" Eliza stood slowly, brushing dirt from her pants. She turned, standing toe-to-toe with him, eye to chest. Then she tilted her head just enough to show that scar under her collarbone. "You want to know what this is?" she asked, voice low. Callier folded his arms, trying to act unfazed. "Sure, go ahead." She stepped closer. "This was a fragment from a Claymore blast. Took out 2 guys beside me. I didn't flinch." Callier blinked. "I was 19. Silence swept over the group like a tarp. "Where?" someone asked softly. Eliza's eyes didn't move. "Don't ask questions you're not ready to carry the answer to." Then she turned and walked off. No one followed. That afternoon, Colonel Bradford showed up on the range. Rare appearance. The old man didn't usually bother with drills. He'd been watching from a distance, arms always crossed, always silent. But this time, he walked through the firing line, right past Callier, past Dudley, straight toward Eliza. Didn't say a word, just looked her over. His eyes landed on the scar. Then he walked off. But the moment was heavy, because while nobody said it out loud, they all felt it. Whatever Eliza Monroe was, she wasn't here to impress them. She was here because she already survived what they were still pretending to train for. After that confrontation, something shifted. Nobody called her bookworm anymore, not out loud at least. They still whispered, still watched her like she was some kind of experiment. But now there was tension behind the silence, like people were holding their breath around her, like they weren't sure if she was going to prove them wrong again or snap their pride in two, and she didn't help ease it. Eliza started pushing harder, faster laps, heavier weight, longer drills. When they collapsed on the grass after morning runs, she was still standing, breathing steady, watching the horizon like it owed her something. She said even less now. Even Dudley, who had been the only one to really try to talk to her, started to keep his distance, not out of fear, out of respect. "She's on a different frequency," he told Pirelli one night. "Like she ain't even here with us. Like this whole thing is just background noise." Then came the stress control drills. These were designed to break people down. Simulated combat while sleep-deprived, food-deprived, and under sensory assault. Smoke, flashbangs, screaming, chaos. They were blindfolded, spun around, shoved into a training site built like a war zone. Objective: identify threats, neutralize, extract a dummy civilian. No real weapons, but paint rounds hurt bad enough to remind you what you're doing. Dudley puked halfway through his run. Callier tripped an IED sensor. Pirelli ran past the target twice. Eliza went last. She stood at the gate while they prepped her gear. Didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just waited. Colonel Bradford showed up again, said nothing, just watched. When they gave her the green light, she stepped through the gate like she was walking into her kitchen. Calm, smooth, unshaken. 5 seconds in, she dropped flat under a window and took out a sniper with 1 shot. 10 seconds later, she disabled 2 hostiles with a takedown that looked too fluid for someone without special training. She didn't talk to her handlers through the mic, didn't ask for updates. She knew where to go. In under 4 minutes, the room was clear and the dummy civilian was secured. Paint on her vest? None. One of the instructors lowered his clipboard. "She's not just good, she's programmed." They called it the cleanest run they'd seen in 5 years. When she stepped out of the simulation room, Callier was sitting on the ground, drinking water, his shirt soaked through with sweat. Eliza walked past him. He spoke without looking up. "How'd you learn to move like that?" She paused, then turned her head just slightly. "You stop thinking about surviving when you've already done it." That night, nobody slept much. The barracks were quiet, except for one voice down the hall. A guy named Rico Bass, former MP. He didn't like being outshined, especially by someone who never said a word. He'd watched her break record after record, watch her take their pride, their bragging rights, their spotlight, and it didn't sit right. So around midnight, he snuck into her bay with a pair of clippers and an old joke about giving her a real army cut. What he didn't know was that Eliza slept light. Too many nights in country'll do that to you. He never got within 2 feet. 1 second, he's holding clippers. The next, he's on his back with his wrist twisted behind him and her boot on his chest. She didn't speak, didn't raise her voice, just stared, until Dudley showed up and pulled her off. Bass wouldn't admit it, but he avoided eye contact for the rest of the training cycle. The next morning, Colonel Bradford stopped her after PT. His voice was calm, almost casual. "You've done this before." Eliza didn't answer. He waited, then asked, "What unit were you with?" She looked at him. First time she held eye contact that long with anyone on base. "You know," she said, "you saw the scar." Bradford nodded. "Yeah, I figured it might have been that. I didn't think any of you were still in rotation." She adjusted her hydration pack. "We're not." Then she walked off. But people were starting to figure it out. Not all the way, not yet, but enough to know she wasn't just quiet. She was controlled, calculated, cold. Because somewhere out there, the old Eliza Monroe died, and whoever came back was built to finish things no one else could. Week 4. That's when Fort Darlington stopped feeling like training and started feeling like something else. Less about tactics, more about instinct. They weren't being molded anymore. They were being sorted, measured, watched. Every day, someone tapped out, sprained ankle, mental fatigue. One recruit quit mid-run and left his boots on the track like he was shedding a skin he never asked for. Eliza? She just kept showing up. Every drill, every lap, every timed course, no questions, no complaints, just motion and silence. The instructors stopped marking her name during roll call, just a check mark. No one said it, but they all knew. She was beyond their grading scale. Then came the final simulation, 48 hours, real terrain, zero contact with the outside, no breaks unless ordered, no mercy if you fall behind. The mission, rescue a mock civilian hostage from an enemy-controlled village, full team effort, coordinated strategy, drones in the sky, blank rounds in their rifles, instructors playing the enemy. The recruits got one briefing and 5 minutes to pick team leads. Callier tried to volunteer. "Let me do it," he said. "I know how to move people." Silence. Eyes shifted. For the first time, someone else stepped forward. A quiet, level-headed specialist named Daria Knoll. "I think Monroe should lead." Everyone looked at Eliza. She didn't react. "I mean," Daria added, "she's the only one who hasn't screwed up under pressure." No one disagreed. Callier's jaw clenched, but he didn't fight it. They inserted at night, cold, wet. The forest outside Rapid City, South Dakota, had that dead stillness that made every crunch of leaves feel like a scream. Recruits fumbled with their maps and thermal scopes. Eliza didn't. She crouched, scanned, and started moving before the team even realized she wasn't in the center anymore. They followed her, quietly, begrudgingly. She guided them between blind spots, avoided sensors, identified cover zones without speaking a word. They reached the outer perimeter of the enemy village in 3 hours. Knoll whispered, "There's 3 entry points, north, south, and the waterway." Eliza looked around, then tapped Callier on the shoulder. "You're north, distraction only. 3 rounds, 2 pauses, then light." He hesitated. "That's it?" Eliza looked at him, eyes calm like she was handing out lunch orders. "That's it." He followed. Everyone did. Because at that point, no one wanted to be the guy who didn't listen to Eliza Monroe. The execution was flawless. Distraction fired. Guards moved. Eliza and Knoll took the waterway, crawling through 6 inches of freezing water for 20 yards, not saying a word. When they breached the back wall of the shack, Eliza moved first. 2 targets neutralized with paint rounds. No hesitation, no chatter. Hostage secured. She signaled. Extraction team moved in. 6 minutes later, they were out. No injuries, no missed steps. At the final debrief, the instructors sat behind folding tables, clipboards in hand. Colonel Bradford stood in the back, arms crossed. One instructor looked up at Eliza and asked, "What prior units were you with?" Eliza said nothing. Another leaned forward. Because whatever it wasn't standard issue. Still nothing. Then Bradford stepped forward slowly, quietly. He didn't speak to the other instructors. He walked straight to Eliza, looked her up and down, and then he said it. Quiet, clear, no drama, no music. That's a Black Viper mark. The instructors froze. A few of the recruits shifted in their seats. One whispered, "Wait, I thought that was shut down." Callier's voice cracked as he said, "What's a Black Viper?" Bradford ignored them. He looked at Eliza. "I haven't seen one of you since Kandahar." And that was it. No salute, no speech, just recognition. Eliza didn't respond. She didn't need to. The rest of the day passed like smoke. No one said much to her, not because they feared her, but because they finally understood. Dudley walked beside her that evening, hands in his pockets. "So it's true, huh?" he asked. She didn't answer. "They say you guys used to work outside the chain of command. Ghost ops, recovery, and vanish. One shot, no backup." She didn't blink. He chuckled. "Explains why you don't flinch when everyone else panics." They walked in silence for a moment. Then she said quietly, "We were trained to get in, get out, and get forgotten." He looked at her. "Guess that didn't work this time." She stopped walking. "It always works. Unless someone says something." Then she walked off. But no one laughed after that. Not at her. Not around her. Because when you've spent your whole life hiding in the silence, and people finally realize what you've survived to stay quiet, the silence becomes power. The base was never the same after that. They didn't make a big announcement. No brass band, no certificate. But the shift was obvious. People stood up when she walked into the room. Not out of fear, out of something heavier. Respect that bordered on reverence. The kind you can't fake. Eliza Monroe didn't ask for it. She didn't seem to want it. But once Colonel Bradford whispered those 6 words, "That's a Black Viper mark," her entire presence became something different. Now they saw her. Not the scar, not the silence. They saw it. The mark. It became the quiet obsession of the barracks. Late at night, when lights were low and chow trays scraped against concrete, people whispered stories they had no business repeating. Black Vipers were ghosts. I heard they operated in places that don't exist on maps. My cousin in recon said they never left anyone behind, dead or alive. They didn't wear dog tags. They wore scars. Callier didn't speak for a full day after the revelation. He wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. The next time he passed Eliza, he actually nodded. Nothing smug, nothing forced. Just a nod, like a man who realized the hill he'd tried to climb was actually a mountain. She didn't return it. Colonel Bradford pulled her aside the day after the simulation. They met near the supply shack, far from the noise. He lit a cigarette, probably his 3rd or 4th that morning, and leaned against the wall like he'd been waiting 10 years to say something. "You didn't have to come here," he said. Eliza looked out toward the training field. "I did." Bradford took a drag. "Your kind don't usually circle back." She kept her arms crossed. "I wasn't done." He smirked. "That's what you think." He flicked the ash, then asked, "You ever tell any of them what happened?" "No." "Why not?" They didn't ask to understand. They asked to judge. That sat in the air for a long time. Bradford nodded. "You know they're going to start putting your name in files again, right? Whispered channels, the kind that don't need signatures." She glanced at him. "Let them." Later that week, the recruits were assigned final evaluations. Everyone had to write a short after-action report about the simulation. What went right? What went wrong? What they learned. Most wrote 2 paragraphs and moved on. Eliza wrote 2 pages. When her evaluator read it, they said it was the most thorough breakdown they'd ever seen. No bravado, no dramatics, just a clear, efficient account of every movement, every error, every decision made. And at the very end, one sentence stood alone. "Silence is not weakness. It's where the strongest things survive." Dudley found her cleaning her gear that night. Same spot. Same calmness. Like nothing had changed. "You're gonna get pulled. You know that, right?" he said. "Some agency, some group. Somebody important's already watching you." She didn't look up. "Good. What happens if they send you back?" Eliza set the cleaning rod down slowly. "I never left." The next day, the colonel stood in front of the full squad for the first time in 2 weeks. "Most of you came here to prove something," he said. "A few of you succeeded, a few of you didn't." He scanned the group. But only one of you walked in already having done it. He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. Pirelli approached her before graduation. I was wrong about you, he said. Eliza tightened the strap on her rucksack. You were wrong about yourself. Pirelli blinked. What's that supposed to mean? She glanced at him, her voice calm. You thought being loud made you strong, but strength doesn't yell. He didn't say anything else. Callier finally got his moment too. He stood next to her at the flagpole during the final debrief, both in full gear, both waiting for transport orders. He leaned just slightly toward her and said, I wanted to beat you, from day one. Eliza didn't move. But now I just want to learn from you. For the first time in 6 weeks, she actually looked at him. And then she said, with no smile but no ice either, then start by listening. But respect isn't something you ask for, and it's never loud. It shows up when people realize you didn't need to say a word to win. The transport truck rumbled down the dirt road as the Fort Darlington sun beat heavy on their backs. Gear packed, orders in hand, new assignments sealed tight in manila folders. Some were smiling. Others looked relieved. A few were just tired. Eliza Monroe, same face, same silence, same scar. But this time, no one ignored her. They watched her, not the way people watch a celebrity, but the way you watch someone who changed something, quietly, without force, without asking. She didn't celebrate. She sat on the end of the bench, cleaning her rifle like they weren't on their way out. Across from her, Dudley finally asked the question that had been sitting with everyone since day one. Why did you come back? She didn't look up. Then she said, to remember what it cost. He frowned. What do you mean? Eliza placed the rifle parts gently on a cloth. Her eyes flicked up, steady. When they shut down the Vipers, we weren't debriefed. We weren't discharged. We were just forgotten. You don't realize what that does to you until years pass and your hands still twitch like there's a trigger. She paused. I needed to see if I still had control, or if I was just pretending. Dudley nodded slowly. You do. She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased, just slightly. When they reached the terminal, the team began to split. Some headed west, others toward Fort Carson. A few were reclassified. Eliza stood alone by her duffel, waiting on her new orders. Colonel Bradford approached one last time. He handed her a sealed envelope. No words. She opened it. The crest on the paper was unfamiliar to most. Black and gold, shaped like a fang. No unit name. Just coordinates. And a departure time. She folded the paper. Didn't think they still recruited, she said. Bradford shrugged. They don't. But you left a mark that was too clean to ignore. She tightened the strap on her duffel. And if I say no? He lit another cigarette. You won't. She turned to walk away. Dudley caught her one last time. You gonna say goodbye? Eliza looked at him, quiet, but something in her eyes had changed. You don't say goodbye to a shadow, she said, then added, you remember it when the light hits you. He nodded. Take care of yourself. You too, medic. And then she was gone. Just like that. They never saw her again. But her name stayed on the board, 112. Still unbeaten. Still quiet. Still watching. Because the strongest people aren't always the loudest. Sometimes the one you ignored is the one who could have saved you without saying a single word. If this story made you feel something, respect, curiosity, maybe even discomfort, then ask yourself, who around you are you underestimating right now? Sometimes the person you laugh at the loudest is the one who's already survived more than you'll ever understand. Listen closer, speak less, and never mistake silence for weakness.